Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful to talk to you again. And I'm always looking for topics which I think you might find of interest, as I do. And I'd like to thank our good friend Dave in America, and regards to him and his wife and Tony, who sent me a little video clip about this lady. There she is, Anita Dunn. You've probably never heard of her. I hadn't heard of her. But she is President Obama's White House Communications Director. So she's pretty high up, and she certainly knows what's going on. Quite a stunning CV and so forth. But what caught my eye when Dave sent me this clip was a address that she gave to some students at a college near where she lives, I think in Washington, students at St. Andrew's Episcopal School. And what she said there then, and I'm going to quote what she says here, she's telling them what to do in life, obviously, when they go out into the world. The third lesson and tip actually comes from two of my favourite political philosophers, Mao Zedong and Mother Teresa. Not often coupled with each other, but the two people I turn to most to basically deliver a simple point, which is you're going to make choices, you're going to challenge, you're going to say why not, you're going to figure out how things do that have never been done before. And then she goes on to tell a strange story that in 1947, when Mao Zedong was being challenged within his own party on his plan to basically take China over, Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalist Chinese held the cities they had. People said to Mao, how can you win? How can you do this? How can you do this against all the odds against you? And Mao thought for a second, you fight your war and I'll fight mine. I thought that was sickening that she tells all these young people there the philosophies of Mao Zedong. Forget Mother Teresa, we talked about her before. Mao Zedong was a monster of the worst kind. He was Pol Pot, Stalin, Hitler, the leader of the Inquisition, the Dominican priest, what was his name, Torquemada, all rolled into one. And who says so? A wonderful book I'm just reading at the moment. You can see it here. Mao, The Unknown Story. And it's a story I'm glad that these two authors have told us about, because this is the face of a monster. Straight away when you go into it, you see what the blur is here. And look at this. You can see here, when Mao conquered China in 1949, his secret goal was to dominate the world. In chasing this dream, he caused the death of 38 million people in the greatest famine in history. In all, well over 70 million Chinese perished under Mao's rule. In peacetime, get that? In peacetime. This was a monster who starved cities to death, had children executed and possibly thrown into ravines and had it concreted over. This is the man, according to this book on page 305, who sacrificed his own brother. Wow, how about that? He could sacrifice his own brother in the party. He also had his own doctor, Dr. Jin. And whatever you do, if your retired locum comes to your clinic or hospital or surgery near you, Dr. Jin, have nothing to do with him, because he was Mao's personal doctor. And his great forte was he could mix the best poison in the business. Yeah, not martini, the best poison in the business. And he used this man extensively to wipe out all of the enemies that he found. Now, it's a wonderful book. Two authors, John Holliday, former senior research officer, and this lady here, Yung Chang. She was in the Red Guard briefly at the age of 14. She was there during the Cultural Revolution. She obtained a PhD in linguistics. Excellent book. Can't praise it enough. But I just want to dip into it a little briefly. The book covers all the great years. Mao's seizing control of the party. You remember the Long March. This was when they marched over 1,000 miles and so forth. I'll move along quite quickly. Building of his power base, conquering China, meeting with Stalin, very interested, had to meet Stalin. Stalin was the dominant man then. Got to see Stalin. Apparently this, why Mao and Stalin started the Korean War. Very, very interesting and so forth. But like all of these books, there's so much in here. I do recommend it. Now, if I go into the pictures for a minute, very, very quickly, we'll show you some of these pictures, because I think the pictures, as they say, speak 1,000 words. Here you have some pictures here taken during the great Cultural Revolution. In those days you were punished, you had a board hung around your neck, I'm a worthless worm and so forth. Millions perished through that. Another picture here, Mao had the great idea of getting forced labour, the peasants to work, and he had the great idea of working with numbers. Get rid of names, get numbers there. Here's an interesting little picture I had to laugh at. Mao, James can pan down there, Mao liked to rule from bed, often some of his colleagues from their own beds in the middle of the night. Chairs from his Politburo set out at the foot of this huge book-strewn bed, on which he also romped with his numerous girlfriends. Another name for a bedside cabinet. If you want to choose a monster, do not choose this person. So what I'd say basically to Anita, if you didn't know this, Anita, I've got the book here for you, okay? If you didn't know all of these facts, I'll send you this book, this dog-eared book, and you can see I thumbed it quite well. I will send you this book free of charge so that you can recant on what you said. Shocking book, shocking monster. These are the people which have made this world an unsafe place to live in. And for her to say, as she says here, this is the man I look to in a crisis, not our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ or God, this is the man she looks through. Now if I can just ratchet it down just for 1 minute. One of the great people who talked about in this book is Chou En-lai. And if I can just show him very briefly here, he's towards the end, I know. He arranged the meeting when Mao met Nixon when he went to China. There you can see Chou En-lai there. Foreign minister, with Mao from the very, very beginning, obviously was never a threat to him because most of the Politburo were taken out. Very ill then with cancer, sick with cancer. And later on, he's obviously been demoted because he's then placed on a hard chair. She tells us here. Mao refused permission for Chou to have treatment for cancer, thus ensuring that he died, that Chou died before he did. Now, I was always taken with this person. If I may ratchet things down a little bit, I heard when Nixon went to China that Chou En-lai had written a manuscript, and apparently during this manuscript he had, I suppose, a conscience of an old man or something like that. He wanted to condone for what happened. He wanted to apologise for the millions of victims because he was very much there all through the beginning. So I had the idea of him, a manuscript being smuggled out, and I went up the loft and I got it. I wrote the 70s. If James can pan onto it, you can see it there, the Chou manuscript. And basically it's the idea that Chou En-lai gives the manuscript to this young girl called Mei Ling for her to take to England to give to a professor that he knew. Of course, the Chinese Secret Service hear about it. They dispatch an agent to get the thing back and to assassinate the young girl. And if I may beg your permission, just to read a little bit of this. I think we're up for time, are we? We're okay there. The book is, it starts off with the book being given by Mei Ling to this chap called Professor Chambers. And this is what it says. My dear Chambers, this is Chou En-lai speaking, how clearly I remember your visits to Peking and as a guest in my own home. In the course of our conversations, I like to believe that you and I had much in common. Your committed hopes that someday nuclear weapons would be extinct was positively reassuring to me. I remember that we both passionately hoped that our great-grandchildren would live in peace and constance, free from the ignorance and fears that stalk the continents of our earth. Now I suspect some of those forces are conspiring against me for what I have attempted to deposit in these, my final memoirs. I have entrusted my beloved Mei Ling to bring the manuscript to you. And he goes on to say, my last request, Mei Ling, has been like the daughter to me, and I feel I can no longer protect her from these men who, if they could, would certainly do her harm. Please do what you are able to guarantee her safety and immediate future. My blessings to you and your family. In conclusion, I am reminded of some lines by your English poet A.E. Housman. They carry back bright to the coiner the mintage of man, the lads that will die in their glory and never be old. I feel these lines would serve well as the epitaph for an old man like me, indeed of any man whose life work's nearly over. Adieu, Chambers, yours in friendship, Chou En-lai. So that's what it was all about. He wanted this guy to do it there, and later on in the book she says to him, she's telling him, he passed Chow's letter to his wife and he says, Mei Ling, does the Premier have cancer? Her face clouded with an inner pain as she answered this. Yes, each day it eats into his frail body and he just grows weaker. Soon, she said, he will go. A little bit there then. And a little bit about her. It says, during the so-called Cultural Revolution, you remember that time in the 60s, the whole China was uproar, millions of people were sent to the fields and so forth, given numbers. It says, during the so-called Cultural Revolution in 1966, that for the first time in her life, she drew back from the rantings of the extremists of the party. She was appalled by the Red Guard and its fanatical display of savagery to oppose them. All about this time, as the sanity of China wavered in self-destruction, she came under the protection and influence of a man who stood for all that was moderate China had to offer. For Chou En-lai, this destructive issue that tore at his country was just another expression or counter-reaction against the politics he had started to navigate and endorse. In Chou En-lai, Mai Ling discovered a father, a teacher, a friend. During the late 60s and early 70s, she gained her doctorate in mathematics, finally lost her faith in Mao and became Chou's personal aide. She became like a daughter to the family, and she in return gave them the love that even the kin of a family are able to form. So really that's it then. The girl comes over, the KGB get involved in it. Usual sort of plot. Does she get the manuscript through? Is it put there or not? Well, I'll have to reread it there then. But there it is, a little bit there. Mao Zedong, the monster, the Chou manuscript. Who knows, one day I might get round to finishing it all off. But back to a more serious note. This is the book, Mao Zedong, and I do mean that, Anita. If you're listening, read this book and find out the monster. So from this ministry, thank you, as always, and Maranatha.